Warm morning to everyone. Hope you guys are excited about our coming panel. So we're excited to have three heavyweight academics with us today, moderated by someone who's not at all academic. But I want to sort of like frame the discussion with this, right? The theme that we're supposed to talk about is how textile inspires social good. And really, I want to focus on how, from the role of university, be it inspiring students in education or taking some of the research from universities into the market, how is it actually shaping social good? But before we get to that, could you guys quickly introduce yourselves, maybe 2-3 minutes about what you do and where you're from? So,
from me? Okay, I'm Zang Yingchun, full-time professor from Tsinghua University. I have been teaching for 24 years. At the same time, I'm also the acting dean of Arts and Design Institute in Milan because we have a new campus in Milan. And I'm also the head of Fashion and Textile Department in the Academy of Arts and Design, Tsinghua University. So I have two positions now. I have done a lot of research, and my research background is about sustainable fashion design and smart fashion. So I have a cooperation with many companies, such as in 2011, I invited Mr. Armani to Tsinghua University to deliver lectures, and also he gave a great funding for me to do my research project. It's an international education of fashion and textile research. And also, we have cooperated with H&M. We will organize an international forum in this September in Tsinghua University. The other partners, such as Kering, I think most of you know that, and Max Mara and Ruyi is a big company of textile in China, and also Zang of Zang. So we have done a lot of research with our partners, not only from the industries, but also from the other universities. So I have many friends here today. I'm very happy. Hope we could have a chance to have a more communication. Thank you.
Hi there. My name's Amy, and I'm a lecturer at the Royal College of Art. I completed my PhD at the Royal College of Art in soft robotics, and I developed microfluidic textiles. These type of textiles contain fluidics which are programmable and can change color and texture within the material. Before I started my PhD, I developed my own material innovation practice called Rainbow Winters, where I developed materials which changed color in response to stretch and moisture, and I've worked with companies such as Philips and the Cambridge Nanophotonics department.
Great, so I'm last. My name is Grace Jun. I'm an assistant professor of fashion at Parsons School of Design in New York City. My focus is on fashion and disability. And first and foremost, other than being an educator, I am an entrepreneur. So I also run a nonprofit called Open Style Lab. It's nationally recognized, and we focus on collaborating with people with disabilities to make creative solutions and making style accessible. So I'll be sharing some of that work today. But also, I think most is to say, as a designer, I started off in design, but it's not a linear track. So for many of the young folks here, there is no one way to do something. I actually worked at Samsung Electronics in IT for a couple of years, and looking into also editorial, but merging both of those have been part of my career for the last decade. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
So the theme of today's competition is textile for social good. And textile at its heart is really about combining design with technology. So as a broad general question first, how can design and technology be combined for social good in sort of some of the work that you have seen in your universities?
Shall I go ahead? Yeah, great. So we've just started developing a new pathway in textiles called soft systems. And this is fundamentally not only about smart textiles or textiles which use, for example, methods in physical computing, but it's also about the system in general. So we develop materials there which may have electronic components, but also on a more fundamental level, they may also engage with the circular economy in terms of developing new sustainability strategies.
I shared a lot of knowledge with our partners, and it's my great honor to be here to listen to so many professional people to show your excellent work. I think as an educator, it's a big challenge for us today how to educate our next generation to balance technology and art or our lifestyle. I am aware that we must understand we should have a sustainable society, so we should be careful to choose our lifestyle in the future. It's not easy for art background students to learn technology today, but they must know what happened in today's society. So I usually organize different background students to work together in a physical space. So it's an interdisciplinary research. They could learn from each other, and they could find the way to innovate new things. And they must know the real society wants. So we also have a department in Tsinghua University to help our students to transfer their innovation to the industry and to check whether it's suitable. On the one hand, we have a lot of benefits from our innovation, but on the other hand, we also met a lot of problems. So we must be very careful about what technology we should choose, what we will not should choose. Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess for Parsons, Parsons is one of the many schools of the new school. So if you've been mixed up on what's the new school, what's Parsons, to clarify, the new school actually has a big social justice and social impact initiative. So under that umbrella, anything that is creatively engaging with some intent and purpose that is community driven is naturally going to use technology as part of that conversation and dialogue. So the design and technology program, as well as Parsons School of Fashion, have integrated some of those in their curriculum and their classes. And for instance, one of my elective classes, I team students from product, sculpture, creative coding to fine arts with people with disabilities for a 15-week course. So there are classes like this that provide a multitude where you can experiment with different tools. And so that's one of the ways Parsons looks at design and tech.
Wonderful, and I think we'll discuss a little bit more about some of the themes that each of you brought up. But something that it's remarkable is that each of you here today represents a different part of the world. And I think there was an article came out last week about upcoming G20, about how countries would be battling out for their countries as they meet. So I'm going to give the battle, put it to you as well, right? If you were to describe your own country and ecosystem and innovation in one word, what would it be? But the other thing that I also like to ask is that whenever there's international geographies, right, there's always a unity in similarities and values in the way that things work, but there's also beauty in the diversity of the differences. So as you answer the question, as you think about a word, highlight a little bit for us what you think is similar across the three countries, but also what's different, uniquely Chinese, uniquely UK, uniquely American. So anyone start first? Yeah.
I think we're all passionate. That's the main thing. We're all really, really incredibly passionate. I think all three would be international. I would say, and that's just my personal opinion, I think the UK is very experimental. And I think that's why people come to the UK, because we're very experimental, open-minded, and we're quite ahead in terms of the processes. We're not always maybe as rigorous as the other nations, but we're very experimental.
I guess I'm a New Yorker. I've been born and raised in New York, so growing up from having African-American friends to Hispanic friends to Chinese friends, we're a melting pot of all types of different races. So I think in the United States, we really have this kind of self-expression, whether that's political or not, or whether it's accepted through other social spheres, but you're free to express yourself. So I think that's one really distinct quality in the States. And I guess what ties us, for many of us here together, is probably that urge to connect, right? Technology has done that so much, but really that now you could, Skype with your grandma who's 90 versus having someone that's halfway around the globe that's going to fly in for a tech talk today. It's becoming more connected. So whether it's through single messaging or from calls, I think we're all here from different countries because of that urge to connect.
I think China is fast developing now, especially during the last 10 years. And also, we are international, such as Parsons and the RCA, our close partnership. For the last 10 years, I have been the director of the international office. So we established our partners from 4 to 63. So it's a big development. We have a lot of international cooperation and international teams to work together. For smart fashion and textile, for example, in 2009, I invited Anouk from Holland. She is famous in smart fashion to deliver courses to my students. And in 2010, I invited a big group from Parsons. Professor Zang is a leader to take part in our great team to work for smart fashion. And we give several exhibitions in the International Fashion Week. And during the last 10 years, we have done many cooperation in this special area, smart textile and fashion design. And we got a big market in China. As you know, we have so many different hubs in China, especially South China. So our innovation could be transformed rapidly from our research projects to a real world. So we also hope we could have more chances to work with all partners in the future.
I think all of you mentioned about international connecting and openness to working with others. And I think one of the inspiring things, at least at the universal research level, is that no matter what's happening at the political scene, no matter what's happening in terms of divides globally, there's a beauty in that collaboration can still happen, and it's a way to model for the future. And when we think about designing for textile, I think one of the things that was brought up by almost all the speakers was that designing for social good requires empathy. Empathy requires the understanding of different disciplines. So in the work that you have done, or in terms of education, how do you promote an interdisciplinary approach? How do you encourage students of different sort of backgrounds to work together with each other?
Yeah, I could take a stab at that. So maybe I'll take a step back and talk about my research approach for disability in design. So 1 out of 5 Americans identify having a disability in the United States. That's the statistics for you. That's pretty big in terms of 4 out of 5 people also know someone with a disability or love someone. So maybe it's your grandma, it's a person who just got injured from a sports accident. Everyone at one point, and I'd love to say this in a way that's not scary, but aging is really going to be the disability we will all face at one point in our life. So why aren't we creating something for our future? And in that sense, I think it's not just empathy. I'm not here to tell you need to go save the world. We got to solve some problems, and that's going to be hoo-dee-da, and we're going to end and all sing kumbaya. But I am going to say that I think there really is a different way or a different approach to see someone in a different light, right? And how do you do that? You just simply get to know them. So part of my entrepreneurship for the last 5 years have been looking at how do we bring some of the most marginalized communities, whether it's elderly in rehab centers, to people with spinal cord injury, into the classrooms for students who are going to lead the future about our thought, about our creativity, and also new technologies. So if you have someone with spinal cord injury in your class, and you're 16 years old or 18 years old, you automatically could understand that person as a human being. Rather than simply saying this is a disabled person, you see them as a person with a disability. So in that way, they're learning through that lens that it's about a life cycle and a different perspective, rather than telling them you need to be empathetic or caring about social good and other communities, when you can actually engage it, right? And unfortunately, ADA compliance in architecture. Not all things are accessible for many people. You know this when it also becomes vision impairment or hearing impairment. So your environment naturally is discouraging many people who can be uniquely collaborative with you and are diverse. So bringing that into the classroom as an educator for myself is first and foremost, and that's one of the ways I bring in collaboration to my students.
Yeah, so I would say we work on numerous projects with scientific institutions. And one of the main problems we have, as everyone would understand here if they've worked with the scientific community, is the breakdown in communication. And I think fundamentally that starts with empathy, understanding that to create new knowledge, that starts off with fundamentally different ways of creating something, so objective versus subjective. And sometimes certain design disciplines and also scientific disciplines look at design to they're trying to solve a problem, trying to find a solution, and it's called user-led design. And within textiles and fashion, we're slightly different. We're actually designing by exploration, and it's very material-driven. And once both disciplines understand these different methods, it becomes a lot easier to work together.
To be honest, it's not easy for us to organize different disciplinary students to work together. But we established many centers in Tsinghua University. For example, we have an X Lab. It's a center for all the students in Tsinghua University to work together, and they could get many funding from our alumni. And 3 years ago, I also collaborated with UNICEF. We established a new center named TUGICC, is Tsinghua University Global Innovation Center for Children. So it's also a platform for all the researchers to work together. The researchers not only from China, but also from the other universities in the world or the other companies. So it's a big net to work together, not only in such as design, but also in medical or engineering or business schools. So I think it's one example for our students and researchers to work together, to encourage them to understand each other, to find other solutions for the new society. So for the next step, we also have another institute in Qingdao, in the middle of China. The name is Art and Science Institute. So it's a big platform to work together with many industries. So we encourage our researchers to get projects from the industry, and we try to find the solution to solve these problems and finish the projects. And in this November, we will organize another very big international symposium and exhibition in our National Museum. And the name of it is Arts and Science exhibition. So welcome all of you to take part in it. Thank you.
So something, again, that all three of you mentioned is that to encourage interdisciplinary, you try to get students to work on projects, real-world projects, be in the labs or outside of the classrooms. And we were just in London last week visiting different universities, seeing some of the students' graduation projects. And some of the professors that we met with there commented on the challenge. And the challenge is this: a lot of students approach these final year projects as creative or art piece. So they will be very creative in the way it's done, but it's not at all commercializable or scalable. But at the same time, a lot of professors also commented that if they start teaching students to be too practical during university, then what chance do they have to be creative? So the dichotomy that they face is that should universities be about creativity or should it be about commercialization and being practical? So I'm going to put a question to three of you, but I also like to ask the audience that question. So how many of you think that universities should be about creativity? Show of hands. Okay, most people. How many of you think that it should be about commercialization and taking ideas to market? Some hands in the front, our speakers mainly. So same question for you. How do you balance between creativity and commercialization?
Creativity and open source ways of working are really, really important. But I also believe that if a student invents something, they have to patent it, you know, they have to make money out of it because they'll feed back into the course. And I think universities really should be looking out for those innovations that start to happen and start to educate their students about how they could protect and commercialize their work. Obviously, it's really important to be sharing ideas, but the invention process is something which creative students should really harness.
I mean, you can't have one or the other, right? I think you have to have both. I mean, in particular for Parsons, we are really fortunate to have partnerships from industry to nonprofit groups to the UN to et cetera. But these are just some of the ways our students are being exposed to, I think, not understanding how to commercialize something, but what's happening in the world. I think first and foremost, besides looking at Twitter and Instagram, right, to know what's happening in the world, you need to look and talk to more people, and people in industry to then come back and look and talk to you. So those are, I think, some of the ways we've approached it. And I think you can't have one or the other because you don't want to stifle creativity, whatever that could mean in different forms and ways. But you also want to be conscientious that you could question some of industry practices if you know about it, if you did your research. So that critical thinking and development is just as crucial as your creative or inspirational thinking, I think, for students.
I think we should combine them together. But it depends on different universities. For example, my academy used to be an individual academy in China, and it's also the first academy of arts and design in China. So in 1999, we merged to Tsinghua University. Some of our professors don't like that, but for the last 20 years, I think we know that we could have more possibilities to work together with the other schools, not only medical school, but also business school. It's very, very helpful. So each year we only have 15 students of textile design and 15 students of fashion design. Altogether, it's 30 students. It's a very small scale. So we focus on creative. But at the same time, when they are in year 3, they must go to the companies as well as our MA students. For example, today I have 3 MA students come from the company Song of Songs. They arrived here today, but they are in internship now. They must have experience about the commercial fashion design or textile design. It's very helpful for them for next step. That's all.
So Amy shared a little bit about patents, and I have this interesting story from SenseTime. So SenseTime is the largest AI unicorn startup in the world, but the backstory is interesting. SenseTime came out with research in Chinese University of Hong Kong by a professor. But because the professor realized that if he were to start this business, the IP would belong to Chinese university, what the professor did was that he got his PhD student to actually start the business such that the business can take off. I hope no one from Chinese U is in the audience for me sharing this story, but I think what this story brings out again, are there sort of like structural challenges within universities or education institutions that might make it hard for innovation to happen? And how can some of these challenges be addressed?
Well, sharing, that's the main issue.
Yeah, I think that's a quite difficult question because for, like, no one here as a designer is going to be like, I need to understand trademark, copyright, and patenting differences right away out of graduation. And it's a lot. It's an overload, right? You got to be a lawyer and a designer at the same time. But I think there are routes where you can get consulting and to look for that and to actually do your due diligence of looking at that. You're getting a design degree, right? And what that means you're looking at it through a creative lens. But you should also be aware about what is it to protect your idea without, coming to my class class and be like, I can't tell Sarah my idea because she's going to take it. Or, not be afraid about those conditions, but rather be boldly more rational and acknowledging what is the IP system here, how long does it take to get one, by the way, it takes a while, and what is like my boundaries and my limitations, right? You might have the most brilliant idea, but guess what? Somebody else might already have it. So I think for an education system to take on all of that, it also takes part of the student who's developed that idea and came out with the first place to have that, I think, diligence and I think, I guess, grit to take it forward, because it's an uphill battle. It's not like a walk in the park and you get your degree and you patent something right away for every student, every thousands of students. So I think the best thing to do is to educate yourself while you're in school. I know it's a lot to ask because we have already core curriculum, we have a lot of electives, but if you care about something, if you really believe in some sort of idea that you've definitely developed, then of course, right? Take the time to research and look into it. So I think for most universities, it is difficult, and it's been steered, especially in the States, more towards STEM and for sciences, but I don't see why not that shouldn't be the case for design, because there's a lot of great innovative things that happen there that overlap both. It's maybe just the structure that needs to be repolished or revamped, but there are actually just routes. And at the end of the day, if you really are someone who does a business or an entrepreneur or a startup, taking other people's money is hard work. So to protect your stuff and to educate yourself is part of that route. So I think it'll just build your character anyway, and not to rely solely on the university to take care of you.
Yeah, I'd also just like to add that patents for any student are really, really expensive. And I know the RCA, they offer patent support, but there's other routes you can do rather than using patents. I mean, there's basic classes in mutual non-disclosure agreements when you start to work with larger organizations, and those can be drafted up out of templates. So simply using mechanisms to protect your work could be an easier route than patenting.
I think education system is changing today. So we give more options for our students. For example, our first-year students could learn more about the different majors. We have 25 majors in our academy. So they could realize whether they really want to study the major now. Otherwise, they could change when they are year 2. And also, we have more and more students come from different backgrounds. Some from architecture school, or some from the business school, or some from the engineer school. So they could change the majors what they want, and then we found that it's very helpful for our students to find their career. And also we have a high-level training for the staff from the companies, because some staff, they realize they haven't receive the level where what they want, so they come back to the university. We also give the chances for them to improve themselves, and we, as a university, we also have a lot of funding from the government and from the industries to support our students to go abroad. For example, the double degree with Politecnico Milano, and also GID program with Royal College of Art. So our students could experience different cultural background and also know the different market in different cities. So that will be very helpful. I think in the future, everybody should study new things, new technology, new knowledge, and adjust ourselves to do what we are suitable.
So we're almost out of time, so I'd like to close with this. We have students in the room today. What's one advice you would give to students who are thinking about doing textile for social good?
Identify that social good. I think rather than the tech and the design, like, what do you care about? And that's a big question, because it takes a long time to actually not get bored and find something that you really care about that you can keep doing. So that would be my advice.
My advice would be to value your process as well as your outcome. I think there's going to be opportunities in the future where the process about developing your item for social good can actually be transferred into industry.
For social good, I think we should remember a sustainable society and be careful to choose what we could use, what we shouldn't use.
Great. So I'll end with this, right? I mean, Peter Thiel, the founder of PayPal, a couple of years ago went on this campaign to tell students to start dropping out of universities to start businesses, which in my view is absolutely narrow in terms of what universities can offer students to experiment, try out, and also collaborate with different people. And thank you so much for sharing that possibilities with us today. So do grab these speakers afterwards if you have further questions. But otherwise, thank you once again, and round of applause for speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you.